Welcome back to another episode on Journey to Authenticity, a podcast helping you to become fully authentic on your journey to success. I'm your host, Braiden Belnap, and I'm a human just like you, striving to build a dream life, all while I stay true to myself. But what if you're in a position where you've lost yourself? Maybe you've made a couple of mistakes down your road, maybe even some big mistakes within your relationship, and you're not sure where to go. You're not sure as to whether you should keep it all into yourself and air quotes so that you don't lose it all. Do you apologize? What are the steps? Maybe you're lost, maybe you're stuck, and you just stay in the same shame cycle. That's exactly why we have Matt Griner joining us today, because he is a relationship coach. And it came from the depths of his own pain, him and his wife's pain, that they transformed. He struggled with porn. He struggled with suicidal thoughts. He struggled with these things. And when he was able to go to his wife and talk about it, it set him free, but also his wife free, so that they could heal as a unit and build a life that they've always dreamed of. That in mind, welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. So just to jump straight into things, what inspired you and your wife to do relationship coaching?
So even before that, we saw a very, very big lack for being honest and actually talking about things that made people uncomfortable. And we had a nanny that was getting married that had a lot of questions about sex. And we were the only person that could answer them for them. And that kind of seemed to snowball into everybody asking us questions about relationships. And my wife and I, we've always been able to be pretty open about things, and we've always been able to communicate. And we've never understood why other couples that we had associated ourselves with weren't able to do that. And so we started a podcast. She came to me one day and she's just like, hey, I don't know why, but I feel the need to have a podcast. And I was like, okay, great. You just want me to buy some stuff and we'll figure it out. and so we did. And now going from what we know now back to that moment, it was very intuitive. And the fact that like she actually did have this calling to help other people in this. But then the reason that we actually got into coaching was because we had to hire a coach for ourselves. And it was because our relationship and our personal lives as well hit very, very dark places. We went down to what we like to call our basement level personally. And for me, my biggest thing was I struggled with my self-identity for so long. Even from the age of 14, I had these suicidal thoughts of like, I'm not good enough in this world. No one really cares for who I am or what I'm going to be. And we know emotionally now, there's this thing that's called apathy. And it's where we numb out and we actually don't like to feel. We don't like to be. We just actually like are numb to the world. And that's where I was at most of my life. Even though on the outside looking in, people would have thought that I was amazing. And even getting married to my wife, that's how it was too. She never knew actually what I was going through. And so when we're in this apathetic state, a lot of the times people use like alcohol, they'll use drugs, whatever. Mine was porn. So I would always outsource to porn, and it made me feel amazing because there's a very, very easy dopamine rush to the brain saying that I'm okay, thinking that I'm accomplishing something. So we started this podcast, and then I was like, crap, we're telling the truth to all these people, but I'm not telling the truth to my wife. And so I finally did, because I got to the point where it was either like take my life or tell my wife about the things that I'm going through. Because I was so wrapped up in the fact that I was going to my deathbed with some of the secrets that I had. Like my kids were going to know about it. My parents were going to know about it. I was going to tell anybody that was going to help me because I could help myself with that. So I finally told her, and she accepted it with so much love and with so much grace. And there's a lot of things that I could talk about of why she actually did that, but she didn't have anybody to talk to. Like I got all my shit out on her and she had nobody to talk to. And so we ended up hiring a coach, and then we'll fast forward through that. But long story short, we saw this transformation in ourselves throughout the 6 months period that we had with this coach. And knowing that we could tell the truth now and be authentic, this coach looked at us and said, hey, there's nobody that I've seen like you. And I think that you guys could do this together. And it was interesting because when I sat there and I actually saw the hope and the spark that this other person put into me, I was like, yeah, I was literally willing to give up anything to go and do what I had already known innately that I wanted to do and help other people. but it just took somebody else to bring it out of me. And so we ended up getting certified as coaches through the coach that we hired, and then taking clients 4 months after that, which was amazing. And so we had to go through our own journey to be able to become relationship coaches or even give advice to other people, because our belief is that like you're only able to help the person that you've been. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about it, because we didn't go get the education of a psychiatrist or a therapist, but we have the actual trajectory that most couples go on and have to overcome. But then there's a whole lot of things underlying that we also have accumulated as far as talents and gifts and things like that. But yeah, that was a long way to say my story, but there you go.
That's it. I mean, like you said, you have to be able to go along those hard things to be able to help other people.
Yeah.
Somebody has to.
For sure.
And that's the apathy.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I believe that's the act of feeling like you're the only one going through what you're going through.
Yeah. Everybody feels like they're alone in that state.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's emotions underneath it, and 2 emotions underneath it are called shame and guilt. And everybody likes to talk about shame and guilt, especially in the mental health world. Like, I feel guilty for this, and I feel a lot of shame for these things that I've done. And it's interesting that as I was reading and as I had gone to therapy and as I was talking to people, no one talked about the other emotions. But it's because they don't really know what they are. So apathy is right above guilt, and then grief is right above apathy. So things that make us sad. So finally, when we can get out of this numb state, this apathetic state, we'll actually start emoting. And that's when our body is going to release, and we're going to be able to talk to other people and talk to ourselves and actually feel something and move forward. And then above grief is fear. And because it's really scary to get out of these states when we're really, really comfortable. I truthfully believe that 80% of people live in this apathetic state, and we just numb out on a daily basis, whether that's with like sports, like whatever it is, whatever your vice is. For women, a lot of the times it's like online shopping. Like, I don't have to think when I'm doing that. But getting out of that state and actually feeling things, that's really, really scary. So yeah, that's where the fear comes in.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, like you mentioned a lot here, whether we're feeling our feelings, intentionally feeling them or not, we are feeling them.
Mm-hmm.
First comes a trigger, then a thought, then emotion, then a behavior, then a result. No matter what, whether you're in tune with your emotions or not, you are feeling them.
Yeah.
It's crucial to actually ask yourself, what am I feeling?
Mm-hmm.
What am I thinking?
I love that.
How would I like to move forward? Because if not, then you're going through this cycle, not even knowing it. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. It's where a lot of people get comfortable. It's where a lot of people will start to move forward, say, oh, never mind, I'm going to go to my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so when you start to understand that, start to understand emotions, it creates a new world for you to be like, oh, I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
How I can overcome this is by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing.
That was a big thing for me too, because I had never had somebody ask me how I felt. And there's a whole lot of people that'll be like, oh, like I hate, because we have a whole generation of people that are like waking up, and everybody says or likes to say, if you base everything off of feelings, then you're not actually going to move forward in your life. Like, I don't really care how I feel. And if the second that I try and address how I feel, right, then the real world is just going to come and shit on me. And truthfully, I believe that feelings are the only thing that are real. And the world is trying to tell you that that's not the case. But if I know who I am and how I feel and what I'm going to do in any situation, then I can propel my life to be what it actually should be. But if I'm repressing those feelings, then I'm living to somebody else's standard, and I'm not going to be myself. And so, yeah, I think feelings are the underlying basis of like everything that we should actually be doing. But that comes off very feminine, truthfully. Like, oh, how do I actually feel? Oh, I'm sad in this moment. It's like, get the fuck over it. Who cares? But no, let's address why you're sad, and let's figure out what happened in your past and what's happening right now subconsciously and consciously for you to be able to move forward past this emotion. Because those are the driving factors that are going to get you what you want. Because the emotion right above fear on our emotion scale that we created, that I would love to share with you guys, is desire. So it's like, once I feel fear and I can push past this fear, then I'm actually going to become the person that I want to and push into the things that I want to as well. So anytime you feel fear is actually when you should actually keep running and keep going. So
when you feel fear, you're this much close to actually getting what you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's where most people quit.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, imagine a world where nobody quit. Everybody would be living their dream.
Because fear is scary, all that stuff. So there's a book called The Way of the Superior Man. Have you ever heard of it or read it?
I've heard of it. I need to read it.
Life-changing. it talks about finding your edge and living there. So it's like every time that I feel fear, if I'm going to run from it, then I'm not going to progress. But there are people that find this edge and find things that really, really scare them. And they will continually just live in places where they're absolutely terrified. And you get a lot of high producers out of this, but high producers taper off. So these people that are like high producers, they're like consistent. They can't not feel something of gratification. And the second that they stop working, then they actually get very, very depressed. So finding this edge is a weird balance of like, when I feel fear, I'm going to do that thing, but I'm going to do that thing just so I can feel fear again. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because when I know I have that feeling of like, wow, this actually scares me, then that's where progression actually starts. So it is cool because you do have a lot of society right now that does run away from fear because it's not easy to not have a paycheck. It's not easy to tell the truth. It's not easy to push into conversations that aren't comfortable. But when you do those things, you overcome so much in your life.
Let's go back to when you were struggling internally. And what was that trigger that you said, I'm going to go tell my wife?
It was interesting. It was kind of like a pot boiling, right, inside of me. And once it boils too much, it tips over. So I had seen myself become the worst version of me, and I didn't even realize it until she showed me who I was actually being. And I think that was the trigger. Where I had gained weight, I realized when I looked in the mirror, I actually hated myself. I didn't know who I was or what I was doing. All I knew was that I was hiding. And this came out in the form of my relationship was lacking. My relationship, especially with her, was lacking. And I was spending time with other people, like friends and family, and I wasn't focusing on her. And we continually fought. And the reason that we fought was because I was continually protecting myself. So to answer your question, it came out in a lot of ways, actually. It came out externally in like how I looked and how I felt. But then it also came out internally with the fact where I couldn't hide anymore. Like I was like continually piling these lies, like mountains of lies that I was trying to like tell different stories about, that I was trying to keep straight. And if you've ever lied, it's so hard to keep this story straight.
Absolutely.
And so there was one night she looked at me and she was just like, listen, we don't have to do this anymore. And I feel like you were giving yourself to other people. And yeah, and this was the night that everything kind of came to a head. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm just like, okay, cool. I have to tell her. She was sitting in bed and I texted her and I'm just like, hey, we need to talk. And it was the scariest thing I've ever done, dude. Like, it wasn't skydiving. It wasn't jumping off a cliff. It was talking to my wife about something that I had been going through. Because my head concocted this thing, which your head does because your brain tries to keep you safe from everything in your life. My head had concocted this story that she was going to leave. I was going to lose my family. I was going to lose my kids, my house, my money, all the stuff just because I'm telling the truth. So it was so much easier for me not to tell the truth. So yeah, I ended up doing it. And it was probably the most pivotal and most turning point in my life for progression for me. I think truthfully because that's not something that I get to talk about a lot. And I'm so grateful that I actually am, because it's something that the majority of men that I know, and probably the ones that I don't know, go through. It's really, really scary to be honest with the person that you chose to be intimate with. Because if you are honest, how are they going to view you and what are the consequences, air quotes, going to be? What I would love to tell everybody is, what if we flip that perception of it? How much better is my relationship going to be when I actually am honest with them, rather than how much worse is it going to be? And now they actually get to see me and I get to be free from this jail that I've put myself in. So that's how I actually want people to see it, because I know that there's something, to all the listeners out there, I know that there's something that you probably are hiding from people. But as you tell that to someone else, like, that's what actually sets you free. And that's what your message is as well, as far as vulnerability.
Dude, it's yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I would just reiterate what you said is, forgiving yourself starts with the apology. For me, I don't know how much you know my story, but I went through a hard time in middle school to the point that I was stealing money from my brother for drugs for me and my friends.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. That's the good stuff.
I held on to so much guilt,
Yeah.
shame. I didn't let me get close to my brother because I knew what I did to him. Well, he called me out on it, and I was like, no, you must have spent your money on McDonald's or whatever. Like, I would never steal from you, and my dad reprimanded him, and that's one of the main reasons why I felt so guilty.
Oh, wow.
Is that not only did I do it, I denied it to his face, and he got in trouble for calling me out on it.
Yeah.
I promised myself after I transformed my own life that I would apologize to him and pay him back before I got married. This is before I knew Megan.
Okay.
We scheduled our wedding day. Well, I've been holding onto that guilt for so long.
Wow.
It wasn't worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I apologized to him, I felt free.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most freeing thing that you can ever do.
Yeah.
Because that goes, yes, your most important relationship is with yourself first and foremost. Your second is your spouse, your significant other.
Mm-hmm.
Third is kids. But you got to, this is applicable even in your other relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so crucial to apologize, and it is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes you're going to negotiate with yourself as to why you don't have to, but you need to start negotiating with yourself as to why you need to.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's amazing. How old were you when that happened? You said middle school?
Yeah, I started doing drugs when I was 12, 13 years old.
Like what drugs?
Weed, alcohol, cigarettes.
Yeah.
Just, basics, nothing hard, thankfully. I
Okay,
always
good.
saw it, but I told myself I will never touch anything unnatural.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, cigarettes are not
Yeah,
not natural.
There's nicotine in there. There's all.
But-
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely a lot better than crack or heroin.
Yeah. But even those things are just used as like just coping mechanisms. So like if you don't mind me asking you, but like why did you use those things? Was it just something that you saw from other people, or like why were you like using?
So this is how I describe my life.
Yeah.
I was born into the perfect family.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and dad together. We played sports, never worried about food. We had a 3-story house. My playroom was about half the size of my house is now.
Wow.
It was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day, me and my siblings are upstairs playing video games, and my mom calls us downstairs.
Yeah.
The energy in the room's already weird. They're crying. We lived in a perfect house. When would my parents ever be crying?
Yeah.
They said, my mom said, your father and I are getting a divorce. It's created 3 main limiting beliefs for me. 1, love is not real.
Mm-hmm.
That definitely showed up in me and my relationship with Megan. 2, I can only rely on me. The ones that love me the most are going to lie to me. Who can I trust?
Yeah.
And 3, you never know what's real and what's fake.
Interesting.
And so I walked into 7th grade, middle school, the first day, already questioning the meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
What does life really mean? I went from what I saw as a perfect house to 2 different houses and each parent working a minimum of 2 jobs to pay for the bills and keep food on the table. So it came from a place of, is this because of me?
Yeah.
Am I worthy?
Mm-hmm.
I was the kid that used to laugh at walls because I just found everything funny too. Nothing's funny.
Interesting.
And so from there, when I was shining a little bit more light on my story, from there I was operating I started smoking weed within the first quarter of 7th grade.
Yeah.
Started dibble-dabbling into selling drugs here and there. Just being a troubled teenager, you could say.
Okay.
Fast forward about 2 years, so eighth and a half grade to 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Started to see where I was headed. I saw friends or close people commit suicide. I saw people go to juvie, prison, you name it.
Yeah.
That's where I was headed.
Okay.
Either 6 feet under, let's be real,
Mm-hmm.
a short life, or jail. And I didn't want to go there. So my emotions got heavier. I
Yeah.
started to actually feel how depressed I was, how anxious I was.
Mm-hmm.
I started to actually hear the thoughts of, are you actually worthy enough to be here? To the point that I was super high, super drunk in my basement with all my friends. And I heard the voice in the back of my head say, go to the bathroom. Didn't have to go to the bathroom, but I listened. And the moment I shut the door, I was immediately sober, and a light came over me. And I heard the words, either you will transform and make an impact, or you will die before you graduate high school.
Cool.
It's the first time that I actually saw myself for who I was actually.
Mm-hmm.
I looked myself in the mirror and saw my worth for the first time in a long time. Walked out, nothing changed except my emotions got a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
And the last day of ninth grade, I heard this similar voice say, "This is your last day to change." I walked home, disconnected everything that could possibly lead me back to my life, and I transformed from there.
In ninth grade?
Ninth grade.
Damn, dude. That's cool.
So I walked into high school, didn't know anybody. I mean, I knew that there was either people that wanted to hang out with me,
Yeah,
that was leading me back to that life,
mm-hmm.
or the people that didn't want to hang out with me, because the truth is I was a loser.
Okay.
Transformed my life, and I mean, this year has been the best year that I've ever lived.
That's amazing. I love that.
Life only gets better as time goes on, as long as you're willing to lean into transformation.
Yeah. No, I love that. Ninth grade. Okay. How old are you in ninth grade?
That's a good question.
What is that? 14,
So
15,
12,
something like that?
14, 15 years old.
Wow. Okay, cool. And you're 25 right now?
25.
Okay.
So yeah, 10 years ago, which is insane. Like going from that to this,
mm-hmm.
It makes me just that much more excited to see where I'm going to be at 35.
No, absolutely. I love that. And there's so much to see in like our younger selves as far as like what version of ourselves is showing up now. The story that you talk about as far as like hearing the voice that is leading you, who do you think that was?
So sometimes we gaslight ourselves.
Okay.
I would like to think that it was my Aunt Val.
Yeah.
Because a couple years ago, I went and we saw her grave, and I heard the words in the head, "That was me."
Oh, that's fucking dope. Yeah.
And ever since then, I just felt validated that it was my aunt looking over me.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds voodoo to some people, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I can't deny my feelings.
Okay. That's amazing.
So,
well, the way that kind of works, oh gosh, yep. Now we're going the hippie route. But but the way that works is we work with a couple of people that are energetic coaches or mediums that actually kind of tap into a spiritual world. And there are so many people trying to give us answers that we actually don't understand that we can listen to. And the reason for that is because right now we've been taught to outsource to something else to be able to receive an answer rather than actually listen to ourselves. And it's interesting that your story went to the point where you had to actually get out of your head, which is what marijuana will do for you, to be in this state. Like you say that night you're drunk and you're high, you're actually not cognitively thinking.
correct.
Your subconscious can actually talk.
Absolutely.
Like we can actually emote, we can actually be free, we can actually do all these things. And so that's why like people do use these things and they abuse drugs, but there's also a very cool side of them that gets us to a point. I always say that, especially with like plant medicine, it gets you to a point to teach you how to actually be. And then it says, hey, you don't need me anymore. And so that's amazing for you because you're actually starting to listen to this voice in the back of your head. Now, whether that's your aunt or whether that's your like higher self, whatever it is, for you, it's so true that it's your aunt. So listening to your intuition and trusting yourself, yeah, hell yeah, that's her. And you're going to go on thinking that you have this angel, this literally the spirit angel guiding you through your life, which is so cool. People run away from that. You say it's voodoo, but what if it wasn't? Like, truthfully, like, what if we just started to trust ourselves and what was going on for us?
Absolutely.
That's the way to live. And that's what, like, I call living intuitive. That's intuition. That's all of those things. But the outsourcing is saying that somebody else has an answer for me. And I'm going to ask somebody else that's on this earthly realm and saying, what have you done? And maybe that's the route that I should go rather than asking myself and actually listening.
Well, you said it. The only reason it's voodoo is because there's people out there that thinks it's weird. It's not weird.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much we don't see in this physical conscious world.
Yeah.
There's so much out there.
Yeah. And that was honestly one of the things that probably helped me the most. And it's interesting because I like to kind of marry the two worlds between like, let's say normalism and like what we see walking around and then the subconscious world. And I'm not the person that walks around and I'm not as hippie as some of the hippies, but I'm not as bro as some of the bros. That's what I always say. And so I love to marry those two worlds because what helped me the most was learning how to meditate. And I didn't go to plant medicine. Like I actually learned how to meditate on my own with our coach, with my wife next to me, which was the coolest thing because how it worked is we like stepped into integrity. We started telling the truth to each other. We learned our emotions. And then once we did that, we understood that we had answers waiting for us in our subconscious if we could just get out of our head. And so our coach actually sat us down and said, these are the steps to meditate. And the reason that we're meditating is because there's answers for you in your life that you are going to need that are locked. And these are the things that we lock, just like what you said with your beautiful story of what happened with your parents and the limiting beliefs that you had, right? To be able to actually pull these things out and understand how to fill the gap in between your answer and your question is self. And that gets excused by so many people because it's like, oh, if I just learn to love myself, then I'll be okay. But it's true. Like if I can actually ask myself a question, listen and wait for an answer, and then once I get an answer, act, then my life opens up. And so meditation is actually the one thing that helped me to get out of a suicidal state, release all my depression, and then understand what I needed we talk about inner child healing, understand what I needed as a kid to be able to go and forgive myself, right? Like I could apologize to a million people, but the one person that I need to actually heal the past versions of myself is me right now at 32 years old. And that's why relationship coaching is so cool, because it's relationship to everything, not just your spouse. It's your coworkers, your friends, anybody you associate yourself with. And what these people are going to do is they're going to pull out the things that you need to heal from. So anytime that I emote, anytime that I'm sad, mad, frustrated, whatever it is, that's something I have to look at, because there are these things that's called mirrors and projections that you've probably heard of, right? And anytime that I'm getting mad, it means that it's my fault. Anytime that I'm getting frustrated with you, I've got to start looking at myself. And so once I can start looking at myself, I understand what the programming was behind it to make me feel that way. And then I get to start questioning if I want this programming still. Like if I actually want to live this life, I get to start questioning my own reality through the mirror that you're providing to me. So if you cut me off and we're driving and I flip you off, right? Why am I mad? Who did I get angry with? Who might have yelled at me? Why am I actually emoting this way? Who did I see doing this?
Absolutely.
And do I actually want to be this person now? So that's the relationship. And that's why we coined ourselves as that, because it's like these relationships will pull everything out of you to be able to heal from your past and move forward in your future, which is amazing.
So what's one thing that you're working on right now in meditation?
Okay. So that's a fast forward question. So in meditations, it's actually really cool. And I believe that world is sometimes more real than the 3D world that we live in, because you can, once you get to the point of like being able to drop in pretty quickly, you can start to build. And so that's where I'm at right now. It's because here's my blueprint. For meditation, for anybody that hasn't meditated, the easiest way to get to it for me, I only talk about my experience because again, I'm versed in what I know and what's helped me. For me, what happens is you'll close your eyes and you'll have to check off a grocery list of things that's going on in your real world. The kids, the car, the money, whatever it is. Those things have to go away pretty quickly. And then what will start to happen is you'll start to see shapes and colors, whether it's blue, whether it's triangles, circles, whatever it is. And those all pertain to your energy centers in your body, which hippies call chakras, right? I keep saying hippie like I'm not one, but so shapes and colors, you check off your grocery list. And then the next thing is you're going to go to a landscape or your happy place. And once you're in your happy place, you can actually feel, and the fourth step is you're going to feel around. You're going to see how you feel. You can see if the wind is hitting your face, if you can actually ground yourself in the ground, like what's around you. And then the fifth thing is that you're going to look around for people. And when you find someone, because you will, you ask them why they're there. And then from there, so that's how you drop into a meditation very quickly. And then from there, what's going to happen is that person is going to take you somewhere to a message that you need to see. And I always like to relate it to like a movie trailer, because movie trailers are like scene after scene after scene after scene, right? And that's kind of what happens subconsciously for us once we're able to get out of our conscious mind. So a lot of the times it'll go to my past, and my past self needed to heal from like porn addiction, and needed to heal from like not feeling loved, not feeling enough, all of those things. Right now is building from the future and bringing in people from my past. And so what happens is I can actually build a home for myself that I can invite people to. And that's been the coolest part for me, because I'll go to my happy place, which is this beach in Southern California that we love. And I built this beach house in my meditations, and I'll bring my past ancestors there. I'll bring my mom and dad there. And a lot of the times you'll tap into your subconscious and actually be able to bring other people subconsciously in to receive answers for yourself. which is beautiful. And that's fast forwarding, like I said. So yeah, what I'm building in meditation is the ability to actually receive and speak with these people subconsciously for my benefit.
So at this point, are you struggling with porn? Are you struggling with suicidal thoughts still? Or do you feel you've been fully healed at this point?
Oh no. So porn was something that was so prevalent in my life. And it's interesting that you even asked that, because every time that we go through a shame cycle, right, it's because we're almost about to level up, right? And so I think it was like last month I viewed porn, and I had to have this conversation with my wife. I was like, hey, I went back to it. And she's like, okay, why? Which is the dopest thing that it could happen in a fucking relationship, where it's just like, hey, like my vices came back. And she's like, well, why? And we know now, like we're talking about shame, guilt, and apathy. This is a cycle. Anytime that I actually want to level up in my life or break past my glass ceiling, my conscious brain is going to be like, that's not safe. Let's go back, right?
Absolutely.
Let's drop back down in, right? So the healing process is actually pretty lengthy. We started this thing a whole 2 years ago, right? And if you take somebody that's an addict and say that they're not going to be an addict going forward, that's hard. You can go into rehab and things like that, but it's a lot of work. And the coolest part about it is having your spouse be there with you. So to answer your question, right, with porn, it's like, no, I viewed it since doing all of these things, but every time that I get to a lower emotional state, I know that there's an answer for me on the other side of it, right? And you said something about forgiveness, and it's taking the judgment out of the act and seeing why the act is helping you. Because anytime that there's judgment on, there's no forgiveness and there's no acceptance for self, right? What was your other question? You said porn and the other thing, suicidal thoughts.
Suicidal thoughts.
Right? No, I don't think that those actually ever go away, truthfully. And it's the same exact message. I know that when I get to my lower emotions is when my body is, and my subconscious is screaming at me that I need to drop in again, that I actually need to start asking questions again, and that I'm at a level that if I choose to, I can overcome, right? I talk about it all the time, but there's these little bracelets called loci bracelets. And I love the message, and I truthfully live my life by it now, because in the top of it, there's water from Mount Everest, and in the bottom, and it's white, and in the bottom, it's mud from the Dead Sea. So it's the highest point on earth and the lowest point on earth. And the way that I correlate that is that if I'm in the lowest emotional state, there's only somewhere to go from there. But if I'm coping and I'm in apathy, then I'm not feeling and I'm not living, right? So even being in suicidal thoughts, even going back to my vices, right? I know that there's an answer for that, because no one, truthfully, bro, no one is going to be healed. It is a journey. So there are people that overcome these things a lot quicker than myself, a lot quicker than yourself. And a lot of the times, even hearing your story, you're just like, I never went back to it. And I was 14 years old and I was like, well, fuck, good for you, man. But the thing is that for me and for a lot of the people that I've worked with and that we've worked with, it's like these things are continually going to come back up for you, A, to show you something, but then B, to show your spouse something. And that's why when people run away in a relationship, I'm like, stop running. Let's actually look at what's happening, because it's just going to keep coming up. Does that make sense? Thank you for asking that question, dude. Like, no one asked that type of shit. So I love that.
Well, we all struggle.
I know.
We're all human. Mm-hmm. Coaches like to act like they're perfect. Let's get over it.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
When I started my coaching journey, I was still one of the most angry people I knew.
Right.
Bro. If you raise your voice at me,
Mm-hmm.
oof, you can ask Megan over here.
Do you still deal with anger?
I've learned to become aware of it.
Just wait till you have kids.
I've learned how to.
I'm just joking, dude.
I've learned, like, for example, let's just say that me and my wife are in a disagreement. If somebody raises their voice at me,
Mm-hmm.
even the slightest, something in me is just like, you're trying to manipulate me, control me, hurt me, whatever the case is. So I have to be aware of that feeling, and I have to say, hey, love, I want to have this conversation with you. This is triggering me, which is not your responsibility. That's on me.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to either move forward in this conversation in a way that we can have a healthy conversation, or I'd like to come back and revisit this.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's a great resolution, right? But at the same time, like, do you still feel anger though?
Sure, but I have to sit with that. That's not my wife's responsibility.
No, I agree with you. But I look at anger as 80% good, 20% bad.
I would agree with that.
right?
Anger's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there has to be an outsource of anger, not an outsource. You have to externalize anger somehow, right? So, I know that I don't know how you guys do it in your relationship, but like, I love the household that doesn't raise their voice, right? But I also love the household that does. And I want to understand why we're doing both, because I know that that needs to come out somehow, because I know that you feel anger towards a lot of people in your past, especially like maybe your family even. How is that coming out? Or am I just being like, I don't want this to come out, so let's be calm?
Sure.
And a lot of the ways that you can do it are, I mean, there's like, have you ever heard of like scream therapy?
Scream. Yeah, go in the
Yeah.
middle of nowhere or a
Mhm.
pillow.
Like even
Scream.
those things, right? Like that stuff is going to have to come out, right? And even for myself, it's like the more that I am just saying, hey, no, I need to be this person, I need to be good. That's the work that I'm doing, right? But if it's still here and I'm still having to address the fact that like you are causing a rise in me and I can't really tell why, and I don't want to have this conversation in a heightened state, then it has to happen sometime, like somewhere else.
Exactly.
And that's why I love couples that fight, because it means they're actually moving forward in their lives. Because couples that don't fight don't talk.
I don't want my wife to bite her tongue around me.
No, absolutely.
Like that would,
Mhm.
I feel like shit
Mhm.
if my wife feels like she needs to hold her tongue.
Like I would be lying to you if I told you that my wife and I didn't like yell at each other. We do, bro. But the coolest part about like actually yelling, and that's my work as well. Like, and I know that every single emotion has something to move forward in my life. And that's what I teach to other people too. Like, you've got to emote. This has to come out, right? But the coolest part about a conscious relationship is what we're coaching people into, is that we can have these disagreements and these arguments, and we can both get triggered and then talk about our triggers literally the second after.
Absolutely.
And we can have this conversation of like, okay, cool. Why did we go here? What am I feeling? What version of myself actually came up? Sorry, man, I go on tangents, but here we go. The version of yourself, we do a lot of like age testing in our coaching approach. And when I yell, usually it's like the 15 to 17-year-old version of myself that wanted to rebel against so many people that never could. Right. And so what my wife is bringing out in me is maybe like, let's say my mom, and the times that I couldn't talk to her, and the times that I actually couldn't be honest with her. Right. And my wife's like, hey, like, why didn't you take the trash out? Or, I mean, something as simple as that, right? And it causes this rise in me because she didn't see me and she's blaming me for something, and then we're fighting, right? And it's this version of me that's showing up that actually didn't get to be able to do this in the past. So every time that happens, guess what? We're closer to being healed, right? Air quotes again.
Absolutely.
Because what does that actually mean?
So I would say the way that I started to transform my anger
Yeah.
was the concept of because we used to fight a lot,
Sure.
especially in our first year of marriage. We
Mhm.
came from both two divorced parents.
Yeah.
So her family's divorced. My parents are divorced. Her families are divorced.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned is run.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Anything. Like we learned all the toxic things, not any of the good things,
Right.
truthfully. So that first year of marriage, when we first got together, it's like we had to unlearn a lot of shit
Oh, for sure.
and actually implement the goodness. I would say the most important way that I started to transform my own personal anger was reflecting with what was really causing it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also the willingness to redo fights.
Beautiful.
Where you fight, you
Mhm.
get triggered, maybe you say something wrong,
Yeah.
coming back to that and saying, hey, can we redo that?
Mm-hmm.
Because it started to teach me actually how to fight.
Oh, okay.
The goal is not to not fight in a relationship.
Yeah.
The goal is to learn how to.
Mhm.
And so when I was able to feel all those emotions in an argument, and maybe I made a couple of mistakes or even more than a couple,
Yeah.
when we redid it, it started to teach me how to actually fight healthy.
I actually love that. I'm going to use that. That's good, dude. That's super, super good.
Yeah, redoing conversations is one of
Mhm.
the most impactful things that me and her have done in our relationship.
Yeah. I think a big part of that too, and because I'm not your normal relationship coach, right? Like I'm not like the whole fill up your bank, your love bank and serve them and all the stuff. Like my favorite saying is be selfish, right? I'm going to be the best me for you. And so I actually take like selfless and selfish, and I coin it as I'm being selfish because I'm going to be the best me for you. And so what that means is I have to take massive accountability for the way that I act and the way that I'm doing things and why we're actually fighting.
Absolutely.
So I can't expect you to do or be or say anything for me, right? And I also can't blame you for anything either. And the second that I do, I lose, because that's creating a victim mindset. I love redoing the conversation, because what that is going to do is it's going to rework the accountability factor for you. Because redoing the conversation for us, when I say we can yell at each other, but then we can talk about it, it's like, okay, cool. What part of this fight am I actually taking accountability for? Because if we're fighting, it means that I am expecting you to do something or blaming you for it, which means is I'm trying to push that onto you, project that onto you. And anytime one finger is pointed at another person, 3 fingers are pointing right back at you. You've heard that before. So that's where we always like to say, like, no one's coming to save you, especially your spouse. They can't save you. It's on you. And so I'm fighting with you. You're fighting with me. Okay, cool. I'm going to help you look at yourself, and you can help me look at myself. Right. And then, yeah, let's have this conversation a different way. But every time that I know that I get a rise that comes up for me, and especially with my kids, and that's why I'm like, wait until you have kids, bro. Because these little people are do you guys plan on having kids? Maybe not. I don't even know. You don't have to answer that.
So far,
yeah,
we walked into Target the other day, made us question that.
Dude, I've got 4 kids, right? And my oldest is 9, and that 9-year-old dude is me. Like, it is me. We literally created myself. And so I don't know if you guys know this story. When he was 7, it's the first time he looked up boobs. 7 years old, dude.
How did he figure that one out?
YouTube search.
Oh,
He's on YouTube, and I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, homeboy's already doing the shit that I did. Do you know what I mean? So I get to have this conversation with this past version of myself. And guess who's the one person that makes me the most angry in the world? It's him. It's because he's literally this perfect mirror of me, of things that I need to get over and that I need to heal within myself. So that's why I'm like, kids are like, your wife will do it for you, your spouse will do it for you, but like, your kids will do it for you 10 times more. And we like to see kids as our greatest teachers rather than we're supposed to be teaching them. So if I bring somebody into this world and I try and control them into the way that I've lived it, right? How demeaning is that? Right? So, and I get the school system and like, and being responsible for your kid and everything like that. But like, if I'm wanting them to live the same life that I lived, then I'm literally just making them the smallest version of them. And I want them to be whoever they need to be, whoever they were created to be, and so I can learn from them.
Absolutely.
Right? Because maybe he's the version of me that I should have been when I was little, but I just kind of took on everybody else's programming. So
well, that's how it works.
yeah, dude.
We have to unlearn and then learn and then implement.
Yeah, dude, you've got all these sayings down. That's amazing.
I do my best.
I know. Yeah, I got to learn from you.
And with that, so change and transformation. Okay. Change, no matter what, me and you are going to be different people in 5 years.
Yeah.
Transformation is when you intentionally change.
Oh, I love that.
So there's, statistically speaking, and I've read this a couple of times, I don't know how proven it is, but there's really 4 things that you have to do in order to actually create a successful life in America.
Okay.
1 is graduate high school. 2 is get married. 3 is get a job. And 4 is to have kids after you're married.
Oh, really?
And as I reflect on that, as you were speaking, you have a choice of being either a victor or a victim in marriage with yourself and with children.
Yeah.
The victims of the world, when their kids trigger them, that's where alcoholism comes into play, abuse, whatever the case is. Or you can be the victor and say, man, this little shit
is trying to teach me something.
Pissing me off, and I need to go do the work.
Yeah.
So I would actually say that's why you're more likely to be successful if you have kids, because it pushes you to be the best version of yourself if you so choose.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I love that. But they'll test you, dude. Like, that's the thing, man. They're going to test you more than anything. So I love that you said that. So in our coaching approach, everything comes more organic, I think, than most coaching approaches. Because we live off of intuition, if I have a thought or a feeling or something that's coming up for me, that's what has to happen in the moment with that client and the person that I'm talking to. And if that doesn't happen, then I start to distrust myself. And it's interesting, truthfully, intuitively, that we're going this way, but trust is the biggest thing in relationships. When somebody feels like they've been betrayed, the trust goes out the window. And the one that actually did the betraying is the person that didn't trust himself in the first place. There's this juxtaposition with the masculine and the feminine. And the feminine does not trust the masculine energy if they cannot trust themselves. And it forces the feminine energy to actually become the masculine, because women innately are stronger than men. Mentally, emotionally, maybe not physically, but they are, right? And so as a masculine person, I've always been more in my feminine. I've always been more emotional. I've always been more connective. And my wife, we didn't know this, but my wife has always been more in her masculine, but it was because she married somebody like me, right? Somebody that was very emotional. And I had the hardest time trusting myself because of my past decisions, right? My past decisions hadn't accumulated into actually anything productive in my head. But my wife, in this masculine role and energy that she had taken on throughout her life, had always trusted herself. So we looked at our relationship when we actually saw ourselves for being able to help each other and fill each other's like holes, not sexually, but like fill each other's holes and being, yeah, for real. And being able to help each other, right? Like she actually started to trust me when I started making decisions. But the only reason I was able to start making decisions and trust myself was because she was the one that taught me how to do it, right? She didn't emote very well. She wasn't very connective. I'm the one that taught her how to do that. And so we talk about trusting yourself, being intuitive, and going this route. I think that this is the message maybe that somebody needs to hear, because it's not what we were talking about. But as you trust yourself in every moment, that's when your spouse will look at you as this masculine being, if we're talking to men, right? As this masculine being, and she will become the feminine that you need, that will energize you to move forward in your life. But as we're repressive and passive and submissive, that's when the feminine is not going to trust us, and they're going to have to start doing the shit. They're going to have to start making the money. They're going to have to start getting the job. They're going to demean you. They're going to degrade you. You're going to want to go cheat. You're going to want to outsource. You're going to want to feel better because you don't feel good about yourself, right? And so it's in little instances, and we've seen this with so many people, that they really start to not trust themselves. And that's when their relationship changes. And that's when somebody has to take a higher role. And that's what's causing a big, big divide in relationships right now, especially in the US, is the lack of self-trust. And that's what's causing cheating. That's what's causing outsourcing, all of this stuff. And if we can just actually just step into the fact that if we listen to ourselves and live intuitively, we'll be the best version of ourselves, and someone else is going to see us because we can see ourselves. So it's
beautiful.
Yeah. Sorry guys, I talk a lot.
No, that was perfect. Which leads me into my next question, because I didn't have to wait to apologize. You didn't have to wait to apologize.
Yeah.
Ideally, in this conversation, we can inspire a man, a woman, whatever the case is, to go apologize so that they can start their healing journey. Talk to that person for a second.
Okay.
Somebody's thinking as they're listening to this podcast, I really need to go apologize for that.
Okay.
Walk them through how they can go about going home and having that conversation, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, two things. So can I address the word apologize though?
Please.
That's for them. That's for somebody else. I'm going to apologize to you. Fuck that. Right? Be selfish. You're going to go tell your truth for you. Because if you're not, right, then, and not to like, but yeah.
No,
yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Because it also.
So I'm going to go tell my truth to somebody else, but it's for me, right? Because this story in your head right now, if you're the listener and you have something to tell your spouse, let's say you cheated or you're viewing porn or whatever it is, like there's so many things that we're not being honest about. You're scared to do it because there's this outcome that they could put on you. That outcome is so much less than you actually being the worst version of yourself and not telling the truth. Like the outcome of you actually stepping into integrity and being honest is so much more rewarding than anything that could happen that your spouse is going to say or do or think. And I know that viewpoint is very not looked at, right? But people are living as half of themselves, truthfully, right now. And you can feel it if you're this person that's in this position. Like, you know that you are not your best self. And it's literally killing you that you're holding things in, right? And so you get to look in the mirror and say, I'm going to do this for me, for her, because I need to be better for her, right? There's that, because when it comes down to that, there is nothing that would hold you back or stop you from saying something, because I have to step into honesty. And as I do, I can be my best self. I can get a better job. I can start trusting myself. I can see the future. I can actually have hope for my life. And I don't have to feel like a piece of shit anymore. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there's a way to do it. There's a way to actually communicate what you're going through to this person that you've chosen to be intimate with, because they're fragile right now. They're going to be very, very fragile right now, especially when you tell them something. And it's with emotion, right? And so the reason that we created an emotion scale that, again, I'll share with you guys that you can send out to people is because you can address your emotions, but you can also communicate them, right? So the way that you communicate something that has held you back for so long is emotionally, and it goes something like this. Like, let's say I've cheated on my spouse. You're going to go to how you feel about having cheated. Hey, babe, I feel really guilty. And it also makes me really, really scared to even to have this conversation with you. So we're going from like guilt to apathy to grief. And right above grief is fear. I feel really, really scared to have this conversation with you because I'm afraid that if I do have this conversation, I'm going to lose you. But I need to have it for myself, because what I'm wanting, because right above fear is desire, what I'm wanting is a better relationship to myself and a better relationship for us. Lately, when I get to this point, because I feel so guilty, I go into the state that I go numb. And when I've been numb, I've just wanted to feel love, and I've wanted to feel something. And I actually did cheat on you. And this is what happened. And I would love to share the details with you, because I know that you were going to need them, but that's my story. And that happened to me, and it has nothing to do with you. That's just how I felt. But this really, really scares me, because all I want is a good relationship with you. So, and I've walked so many guys into this conversation, and that's why I say it so nonchalantly, because it's the hardest conversation to have. But a lot of people will go into this conversation with something that they've held back and repressed, with a lot of blame. I did this because of you. I did this because you weren't showing up the way that I needed you to show up, and so I went and found somebody else that could, right? Nah, that's not how it works, man. How it works is that, like, I did this because I felt this way. And I don't want to feel this way anymore, and I want you to understand that. So that's what I would say to anybody that's holding anything back, is that you are holding yourself back and not being honest, right? The best version of you comes right after you're actually honest, and you can start trusting yourself from there, because you just like accumulate times of trust, and then learn how to actually address your emotions and communicate them.
I love it.
Yeah.
So after that conversation, what would you say are the next steps that they should ultimately take to heal as a couple and as individuals?
So, dude, you're good at this, man. You ask really good questions, dude. Yeah, next thing for that, the feminine wants to, and this kind of ties in with the very beginning, the feminine wants connection and emotional connection at that. The masculine usually wants physical connection, right? So a lot of the times that's why we get in the positions that we do, because like either we're not having enough sex or being like met that way. So we find it somewhere else, and all she wants to do is talk, and it pisses me off, right? But we get to the point where I'm being honest and I've told my truth. And the feminine feels that they have all of us in this moment. And don't quote me, but right now I'm at a pretty good percentage of people going to their wives and telling the truth, and their wives actually doing what my wife did and feeling like they have all of me, right? And feeling that emotional connection and wanting to actually see you for you just in that moment, in that conversation, right? So if there's a little bit of a weight that I could lift off your chest, is that like more often than not, when you are honest with your spouse, right, they're actually wanting to see you. Now down the road, that might change, because we get into actual real life and it's hard to work on things. And that's where step 2 comes in. And step 2 comes in is that your wife is going to need somebody to talk to. She's going to. And you're going to have to understand that there's a lot of work to do to get over whatever happened, whether it's addictions or outsourcing or anything like that. There's this work that comes, right? The first thing is that you have to talk to someone, and I hope to fucking hell that it is not your family. I hope that you don't go share this with your mom and dad right off the bat, because all they're going to do is protect you, but they're not going to see anything else, right? And so usually what happens is like someone will be like, Mom, this is what he said to me. What should I do? What's mom going to say? Fucking run, right?
Absolutely.
And so whether it's a therapist, psychiatrist, counselor, coach, whoever it is, I would love for you to actually have this conversation with a mediator, because then you get to open up the doors of, well, how does this actually affect me, and where are we going to go from here? now that I can actually make like a decision reasonably, right? But there are no reasonable decisions when there's ultimatums. And there's a lot of ultimatums when you go to family because they have societal norms that they have programmed into every response for them. So I think those would be my 2 steps, is that just understand that whatever is scaring you right now to share has to be shared. And as you do that, if you actually do it with a genuine intention, the feminine will receive it that way. And if you release expectation and blame off of that conversation and you put emotion into it, it'll be beautiful. But then from there is help. And people have been to the places that you have been to. And the reason that we started relationship coaching, it to kind of round it out, is because we knew that we could take somebody that had been in our shoes and walk them through the exact same thing that we have been through. And that's what's happened for us. Because it was really hard for me, because after I talked about everything, I went and saw a therapist. And I love therapists because they've helped so many people, right? But I didn't find the help that I needed in that because no one had been down the road that I had been down. And I needed somebody that had been in my shoes and done the thing that I had done, or at least experienced it, right? That could help me through it, right? So those would be my steps.
I love that, man.
Yeah, dude.
Well done. There's so many people that just throw in the towel, and when people come out on the other side winning, I just applaud them, because
thanks, man.
Strong people are created by going through hard times.
Oh yeah, your message, for sure.
Strong relationships are developed by going through hard times, and we need to bring back let's keep our word to ourselves or spouse, whatever that case is. That promise that you made when you went and got married.
Yeah.
To death do you part, whatever the case is, whatever they say.
Yeah.
You made that promise. Keep it.
Interesting.
Do whatever's necessary to keep it. As far as I'm concerned, you're only as good as your word.
That's true. But can I say one more thing?
Please.
I really don't care if people stay married. I don't. Right?
That's fair.
I care if people understand who they are and then want to choose their spouse every single day. Because I would never want somebody that doesn't want me.
I would agree with that too.
And it does take this institution of marriage a lot of the times for people to realize actually who they are. But the coolest part is that like, I don't want people to run away from relationships either, because I know that they are your best teacher. Like, this is where you heal. You could run away, just like you said, and stay single and move on to that relationship after relationship, but everything's going to come back up. So I always say, like, I don't really care if people stay married, but that is just to release the judgment that marriage has. Because once the judgment is released, and once this have to is released, then I just get to like, there's so much weight lifted off of my shoulders. When I heard that statement, it was just like, oh my gosh, like, okay, cool. You can just see me for me, and I can see you for you. And every single morning I get to wake up and be like, damn, that's my wife, and I'm not going anywhere. Right.
And I would agree with that, because we don't have to stay married. It's actually, divorce is actually pretty simple.
Dude,
Let's be real.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of like intrinsically, it's actually, it is simple. It's just like, we're done. Like, that's that. High five. Let's move on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, good. That was amazing. And there's ones that are dirty and nasty, but that's what relationships are. Relationships are hard, but there's a reason that relationships are hard. And truthfully, what it is because it's supposed to show you the best version of you. So
exactly. Choose your heart. You want to go through life single and miserable, or you want to go with it with your biggest cheerleader? Yeah.
And what I've learned too is that a lot of people have built up their businesses. They've built up their like socio-economical status, right? And then everything comes to a halt for them. And now they want the best relationship that they could have, right? And they don't know how to get that, because all they've done is just build up this person that they thought that they should be, without this other person frustrating them and showing these mirrors to them and pulling things out of them. And when that happens, it's like, oh gosh, what is life, dude? Right? So I would kind of urge everybody to look at why their spouse is actually helping them and not hurting them.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Well, a couple more questions to round out.
Cool.
Is one, if you had one last piece of advice for the audience around relationships, what would that be?
Understand that they aren't you, and that they don't work like you, and that you're an entirely different person. That's what I would say for relationships, because if I think that they're going to do something that I would do, I'm wrong. But for an individual, my message would be, and the reason I say this is because I want to build up an individual in a relationship. For an individual, it would be start to trust yourself. Like actually start to listen to what you're wanting to do every single day and then do it. That way you can be the best version of yourself in your relationship and to the world. And your gifts are going to come out through that. There are way too many fights, and there are way too many divorces, and way too many suicides, and way too many, all the negative things that come out of realizing that we're trying to live this life for somebody else when there's only one life for us to live. And as we trust ourselves and realize that we are not the person sitting next to us and we are just being, then we can be the best version of ourselves and create from there. So that'll be my advice. Yeah.
I got to say, this is actually a great time to do this podcast because this will launch October 9th.
Yeah.
Our anniversary is October 8th.
Oh, how cool. I love
Let's
that.
go.
That's sweet.
What would you, just in general,
Yeah.
if there's one last piece of advice that you could leave with the audience today, the 25-year-olds building businesses out there,
Yeah.
what would it be, just in a general sense?
Yeah. Same, along the same lines as follow your intuition. I love asking for advice, but I also love listening to yourself. That's where I've found the most success in my life, is that if I follow my intuition and I actually trust myself enough to act, then my life is going to go the way that it needs to go.
It's powerful. And the last question is, what is your definition of an authentic life?
It's just that, man. It's living intuitively, truthfully. And I feel like I'm being redundant, but I would love to ingrate it into people, is that like, if I only listen to what I need to do in this moment, and what that looks like is that you know those thoughts, you know the voice in your head. There's negative thoughts and there's positive ones, but then there's actual feelings. So I want to get rid of all of those thoughts and say, those aren't me. And I want to actually know how I feel in moving forward. And the way that you're going to know this and the way that you're going to live intuitively as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a wife, whoever, whatever your walk of life is that when it scares the shit out of you, it's true. Or when it makes you so sad, it's true. And you have to act, because those two things are emotions. And that's why I think that feelings are the only things that are real. Thoughts, ideas, all of those things come from other people. Feelings can only come from you. So if I'm doing something and it scares me to do it, hell yeah, I'm going to do it. I have to have this conversation. I have to send this text. I can't hide from this anymore. My body's literally screaming at me saying, please do it. Right. And if there's something making me really, really sad, that's what I have to address. Like that's what's actually happening for me. And you can see this in really cool small moments. Like if you ask your spouse something and they say, I don't know. I don't know is like the biggest trigger statement for me, is because you're the only one that does know. So get rid of all these thoughts of like, I don't know, and maybe I should have done this, and maybe I could do this, and all of this stuff. And it's like, no, like, take a deep damn breath, and then tell me the real thing. Whatever happens for you right now, that's what it is. Do it.
Absolutely.
So
I don't know is what stops emotions from taking place, as far as I'm concerned. Right? Because as I mentioned before, thoughts create emotions, emotions create behaviors, behaviors create results.
Yeah.
When we ask a question, it creates a trigger, creating thoughts. Mm-hmm. The words, I don't know, stops the emotion from taking place.
Yeah. The other thing, and this just came to me too, is as far as my piece of advice to the world or anybody, truthfully, is tell the truth. Like the truth, when people say the truth sets you free, it's actually true. If you can tell the truth, no matter what, your life will be 1,000 times better. And as I tell the truth, it will make other people very irritated, and it will make people that are not comfortable with the truth run away from my life, and that's okay. But it will make others that I need in my life gravitate towards me. And even more than that, it will make me be who I need to be. So stick with the truth. And anytime that like you feel like I shouldn't say that, no, you should say it.
Powerful.
Yeah, man.
Amen to that. That's just authenticity.
Right.
Living your word, living your truth.
Right.
You always know, again, going back to not saying I don't know, you always know whether you're being authentic to yourself or not.
Absolutely.
Always.
Yeah, for sure.
It's always a choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting part about authenticity, is it's actually not that complicated.
Right? But people think that it is because they start to listen to the voice in their head, which is always usually not the right one.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything myself and my audience can be doing to support you?
I would love, so my wife and I run a podcast together, and our podcast really is just us talking and sharing our views in a relationship. It's called Grind Together. I would love it for anybody that has ever been through anything in a relationship to listen to it. That would be very, very cool. Because the reason that we do it, we've never tried to monetize it, and I don't think that I ever will. And the reason we do it is just so other people can relate to what's going on in a relationship. And so I would love for you guys to listen and follow along there. Other than that, I truthfully would love for you to look in the mirror and understand who you are and just ask yourself that one simple question. And that would be supporting me, because I want people to start living authentically, intuitively, and consciously. So yeah, monetarily, I don't give a shit. Like, I would just love, and I know people are going to gravitate towards our message through them actually living up to their highest potential. So
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again for listening to the Journey to Authenticity podcast. If you liked what both Matt and myself had to say, be sure to like and subscribe. This helps me to get the most optimal guests that can come in and ultimately transform your life. Also, why I have you here, if you have a company, if you have an event going on with 5 or more people, and you not only want a motivational message, but you want a message that will truly transform your audience, either go to braidenbelnap.com or the link below, and I'd love to come speak at that event. Have a good one, everybody.